If you follow along in this video, you'll make this part and this drawing. I do recommend, however, that you pay attention to the description of the exercise so that you make sure you're working on the right things. Now, as we start our part, we want to make sure that we have named this well, following good naming scheme methodology. We also want to make sure we're working in units of millimeters. We want to start our sketch, choosing our top plane, making sure our origin is showing up where it's supposed to. So I've turned on the visibility planes so I know where I'm working. I got my basic rectangle tool. Now I'm getting, on this strategy, the basic overall shape from the top-down view in terms of making an entire cube that can enclose the entire shape. So now you can see I'm creating a 4 by 2 millimeter extrusion is what I'm about to make. Of course, the strategy that I'm going for here is to make this entire cube and then cut out the parts that I don't want. This is going to give me some experience in learning how to make both extrusions and cuts. So I'm referring to the drawing here, or the hand sketch from visualization exercise number 1 to make sure I'm getting all the dimensions right. And this is looking pretty good to me. So on to starting to create the cuts. I want to do the cuts from the topmost surface, which is why I chose that plane of the part. Notice I did not choose the top plane, but I chose the topmost surface, the top surface of the part itself. Now, I'm now creating the shapes that I want to use to create a cut. Setting these to the dimensions according to the hand sketch that I made. Saying that that's looking good, and as I rotate this around, it looks like I got it on the right surface and things are looking good. I'm going to go to this extrude cut button. Now it's asking me to choose the thing that I want to cut, and you can see that's worked out just right. It's exactly what I want. So I'm going to go ahead and choose to accept that. And as I do, you can see things are starting to work out for me here. Now I've got another cut that I need to do. Now this part's going to get just a little weird, but it's okay. It's going to get a little weird because my part itself is going to become kind of two parts because this particular shape is not connected. Now you can see I chose that bottom left-hand corner and the top corner, or the bottom corner of the cutout we've already made, and now it's telling me that I have some redundant measurements. And that's actually good for me to know that the computer has grabbed on to those points and made them coincident. But I needed to make sure that I told it that I wanted those dimensions to continue to be driven. That is, they are just what they are because of the other geometry in the shape. Now you can see I've accepted that, and it's freaking out a little bit because I have two parts in my part. And I'm just telling it I want to keep both parts. It would be unusual to have something like this. If we had multiple parts, we'd put them together into an assembly. But we'll learn about that later. All right, so now I need to just keep creating my cuts. And I know that on this surface, keeping track of where the origin is, on this surface, I know that I have two cuts that I need to make. So starting in the bottom corner, coming up to about halfway, I create the box that I need to do. Now I'm going to get some redundant measurements again because it knows it's going to the center point, and some redundant measurements again because it already knows the size of that. I tell it I like it, and I can see the sketch plane there. I hit the extrude cut button, and it wants to go to the previous amount, which is 4 units high. I'm going to tell it I want to have 2 units high, or actually referring to the drawing, I want to make it a depth of 3 units in the cut. So that's what I've got there. That's looking pretty good. So I'm gonna tell it that I like that, and I'm gonna make my next set of cuts in the downward direction. I like to look normal to the plane, so I've told it that's what I want to do. Now I've gone again from corner to corner, so I should get some redundant measurements here, and yes, that's what that's telling me. Again, I get another redundant measurement. So I think we're pretty much good to go here. I need to just tell it the amount that I want to cut downward, because it's going to go to the previous value. So there we go. I've switched it to cutting down just 2 units. And you can see I've got the first half kind of my part made. All right, so now it's just a matter of going on to the second half. And I'm going to choose my top surface as the one that I want to create my sketch on. I'm going to look normal to that sketch, choose my rectangle tool. I'm going to come up here, and just for fun, I'm not going to choose the center point. Now I should have one redundant dimension here, but my next dimension is unknown to the computer, so I'm going to tell it that I want it to be 1. So there's multiple ways to do that. And by the way, as you're working on these things, I really encourage you to think about more efficient, better ways to do this kind of modeling. I'm showing you one way, and I don't at all pretend to tell you that this is the best way to do it, but it is a way to do it, a way to get started. Now I like to look at my views in the same way that I did my hand sketch, and so I've just set it that way. I like to turn off my planes, and now I know my part's looking pretty good. And looks like I had forgotten to actually save this thing, so I'm saving it now as part E, since that's what we're looking at. All right, so now I'm gonna make a drawing of this very part. I'm gonna choose my B-size drawing. I'm gonna click on the part that I want to make a drawing out of. I'm now gonna click multiple views, and then click the 4 views that I'm interested in: the top view, front view, right view, and the isometric view. And here they are coming up. Now I'm not actually quite sure why they've come up so small, but I'm not going to really worry about that right now, because my objective is to just get my feet wet in creating the drawings. So now I've got my smart dimension up there under the annotations tab, and I'm just starting to think about how do I want to call out the way that this thing should be dimensioned. And I'm keeping track of kind of where my origin is, trying to dimension everything off of the origin, or at least the datums that the origin goes through. And you can see I put some dimensions in there that I think I'm actually going to be removing, because I really want to just lay out these dimensions in the cleanest possible way. You can see I have that 2mm dimension on there that's redundant at this point. I definitely do not want any redundancies in my dimensions. So I'm just going to delete those. And now my dimensions are kind of tight at the top there, so I'm just going to drag this down and just make it a little clearer. And I'm going to move my isometric view off to the side, because that's kind of where I usually like those things to go. Now I really have to spend a little bit of time pondering here on what else needs to be dimensioned on this, and what views would be the best views to put the dimensions on. So now I'm going to just do that, putting on some of these extra dimensions. They're not extra, they're necessary for fully defining the part. And I'm trying to place these in a way that they will be visually understandable and good. And there's some practices, general practices, that we will want to follow, but we'll go over those later. The purpose at this point, I'm trying to move this view now, and I'm realizing I'm still on dimensions at that point. So now I'm back to picking the actual part and moving it. And well, one of the things we want to do is just get familiar with the idea of a drawing, and that's what we're trying to do here. So I'm going in and view editing now the format, and as I edit the format, I can just go in and start to add in some of those materials that matter, or the thing that going to add in the materials that the part is made of. I'm going to say kind of how I want the finish to be. Now in this case, I've really just kind of chosen a random material just to be able to practice specifying the material. Now I don't recall that we actually specified the material in the product itself. So I think we'll be going back and fixing that in just a second once I finish the title block. It's kind of important to pay attention to how you want to name your files. I like to be following this method right now, which is to put the part number, part E, and then from what exercise that part originated from, which was visualization exercise number 1. All right, so that's looking pretty good. I think I can accept this by hitting that green button that's over there. Now I want to add a note because I want to be able to have some notes in my drawings. I want to be able to say things that would be important to someone who's making this or someone else who might be working on it. And because this part's unusual because it has 2 parts in one part because of its kind of strange shape, I think I'm going to try to create some sort of note associated with that. Of course, if my note goes off of the format, I want to pull that back into a desirable spot on the drawing, which is what I'll need to do in just a second. All right. There we go. All right, so I think it's valuable now to go back into the part after we save this. And I want to see what's going on with the mass, not the mass, excuse me, the materials. So I'm going to double click on this materials, or possibly right click on the materials, and pick the material, assign a material to this. So I'm closing the steel, opening up the aluminum, scrolling down until I find 6061 T4. And actually, as I'm doing this now, I'm kind of realizing that I think I wrote TS on the drawing. I'm going to have to go back and check that. So I've assigned a material. You can see that over on the left-hand side, it shows material specified. And now I'm scrolling in to here, and it looks like I did write TS, so I need to just make a change. So I'm going to go edit the format, double-click on that, and I should be able to switch it to a 4. There we go. So that's that. Saved. I should be in pretty good shape at this point.